old as the internet itself, so we're excited to talk about a new technique we've got. So what are we talking about today? Well, first, we're proposing an extension to a web standard called Autocomplete. And secondly, we're going to show you the implementation that we have going in Chrome, which is partially a proof of concept and partially something that we hope to launch sooner rather than later. So without further ado, I'm going to cut straight to the chase and give you a demo of what we have going on. I'm a new user on this website. This is a site that sells booze-related accessories. I don't know how to even pronounce the name of this site. I've never been here, but this looks kind of exciting. I'm going to go after this lasso wine holder so I can capture all the wayward bottles of wine that are trying to run away before I can drink them. I'll go to checkout. And so I'm hit with a page that's full of forms that I have to fill in. And it's all this data. I don't really look forward to doing this. I know it's going to happen when I go to buy stuff online. I know you're not looking forward to watching me type it in. So instead of making you watch that, I'm going to back out of here and instead show you how easy life could be. So I'm going to enable the new feature that we've got here. Going to try checkout again. And this time, Chrome pops open this dialog on top of the web page. It's presenting this information that Chrome knows about me because I've typed in the past. So far, nothing's happened, but if I type in my CVC right here, I then hit submit, this information will be sent down to the merchant site. As you can see, it's reciting it back to me. And now the site's ready to put this card number into its payment processor as soon as I hit place order, and I'm done. The order is placed. Now that was really easy. That was great, because I'm really lazy. As you can see, I don't even like typing in my own information when I'm buying something. And then there's another example of me being lazy on this slide. So this is me commuting to work at the office in beautiful Venice Beach, California. I'm taking the bus. And here's me. So I'm being very efficient in this picture, or lazy, however you want to look at it. I'm getting maximal rewards for minimum effort. This is something that makes me also very keen on online shopping, because online shopping is very efficient compared to real-world shopping. I don't have to drive to the store. I mean, LA usually is a swath of traffic. The store is way over there. I'm over here. Once you get to the store, you have to find the item. You have to wait in line at checkout. It's a big hassle, and it makes you feel rather emo. But the one thing that's good about buying stuff in the real world is it's very easy to pay. So as soon as you get to the front of the checkout line, you hand over a big stack of cash, or you swipe a little piece of plastic, and you're done. It's something so easy a baby can do. But as we all know from personal experience and from what I showed you a second ago, it's not as easy on the internet. So here is an example where I went to a web page and a merchant site. I tried to buy something. I'd never been to this site before. And then when I'm going through checkout, there's these 4 distinct steps that require interaction and inputting information before I even get to the confirmation page. This is a big hassle. And this is why we're seeing users abandon items in their shopping cart, or this is at least one reason why we see users abandon items in their shopping cart upwards of 60% of the time when they're going through e-commerce checkout. Something like 14% of users, if you poll them, will tell you that checkout complexity is one of the limiting factors and why they don't do more online shopping. And then, of course, you might have navigated here on your mobile device, in which case you see something like this. Half your screen is taken up by your keyboard. You're trying to type in addresses and numbers, and things are not easy to get exactly right on a small keyboard where predictive text doesn't help so much. And so the abandonment rate skyrockets up to around 97% on mobile. So this is a huge lost opportunity, a huge frontier, much room for improvement that we think we can tackle. And that's one of the main motivating factors for what we're presenting today. At the end of the day, you end up feeling a lot like Fry as a user. You just want the sites to take your money and give you your goods, and you don't care how it's done, as long as it's secure. So what are we doing about it? Well, a few years ago, Chrome introduced a form-filling feature called Chrome Autofill. And what that does is when you type in information on one page, it will remember your information, and then you go to another page, and it'll help you fill it in. There's a couple of problems with that, though. For one thing, it's tacked on top of the web, so it doesn't have an easy time of matching up the form fields from one page onto another. Since every page looks different, it has to figure out what kind of data was going into this field and on site A and match it up to which field on site B should get that same data. Another problem is that site A may not have asked for all the same data, so you haven't typed it in yet. Chrome doesn't know that. It can't fill it in on site B. And then there's cases like you saw on the last slide where there's a checkout flow that's several steps long and you have to initiate autofill over and over to get through it. And while this is a good tool to have in your belt as a user, it makes your life a good deal easier, it doesn't help much for developers. Developers are people too, of course. So they look something like this when they're trying to come up with the perfect checkout flow. They have a lot to worry about. They have to make sure the UI is intuitive and friendly and not confusing. And there's all kinds of research. I mean, there's entire journals that talk about user experience research that focus on how to improve your conversion rates in the checkout flow. So it's a hard problem. And then you've got to worry about selling internationally if that's your market. The address information that a Slovakian user or an Irish user or a local user would put in is all different. In addition to that, no matter what you do, how intuitive or friendly your UI is, there's going to be typos when the user is putting in new information, or if they moved, they changed their address, they have a new credit card. They're always going to make typos, and so you have to validate that input. And every site out there that's doing that is reinventing the wheel over and over. It's a big hassle. From where we stand, there's a lot of wasted effort, both on the developer side and the user side. The user is typing in the same information over and over. And so as the browser and as the platform, we think we can make a big impact and reduce the effort of everyone involved. The only thing that we have to do is we have to have collaboration from the page and the user, and they have to rely on the platform. So here I am again. In this case, I'm here in a metaphorical sense, and I'm a web developer who is not exactly getting a free ride, but getting helped along by requestAutocomplete, which is the loose name for the new spec that we're introducing today. So what's left in this presentation? Well, first of all, I'll give you a little bit more of an extended demo of what we got going on the desktop. So I should say that all the demos you're seeing today are live in Chrome. They're not enabled for users, but they're behind the flag. And if you have, if you download the Chrome source and you build it yourself, you can see all this in action. After which, Dan's going to stand up and he's going to tell you how to integrate it into your site as a merchant. The smoke and mirrors, what's going on at the last site that we were on in order to make this checkout experience possible. And then he's going to tell you about all the features that we were able to add on to our implementation to improve the ecosystem, both adding layers of security and convenience. Some of these features might even blow you away, as they did to Dan. After which, I promised that mobile was one of the areas that we could make the biggest impact, so I'll give you a demo on the implementation that we've been working on so far concurrently on an Android device here. So, without further ado, it's time to check out. I'm going to press this big, juicy button, and this is the dialog that you saw a few minutes ago. So one thing you didn't see before is this big red banner on top. The point of this banner is that this slide deck, which is an HTML5 slide deck, is not actually a secure place to input your credit card information. So we're warning the user about that, but that's OK. As the user, I'm going to make an executive decision to input my information anyway. Now, Chrome already has this information stored about me. I haven't had to type anything in. But I'm actually going to say that I am shipping this to my dog. It's a gift, so I'm changing the shipping details. And as you can see, it was really easy to choose among the different addresses that Chrome has remembered about me. And something else I'll need to do, of course, is type in my CVC. And here we go. I'm going to press submit. Like I mentioned before, input validation is one of the things that we're targeting for our implementation because, of course, 9i8 is not a valid CVC. So we're trying to make the experience really easy for users to understand why the submission failed, give helpful error messages, and make sure that the data that we collect from users is really high quality before we send it down to the merchant. One last thing I'd like to point out is that all of this is stored locally in Chrome, but it's also synced to the cloud. At least the shipping addresses here are. So I never typed in these addresses into this particular Chromebook, but my other Chromebook, which I've left at home, is where I typed in originally. And because I have Chrome Sync enabled, it's synced to all my devices. Anyway, I can press submit. It's done. And I'll hand it over to Dan to tell you how to get this nearly one-click experience on your site.
Hello, everyone. So I'm sure you're all wondering, how do I integrate this with my site? We're at a developer conference. Everyone wants to see some code, right? So let's see some. First, we're going to go through tweaking your existing markup to allow requestAutocomplete to work with it. And then we're going to invoke the API and handle some errors. So here's an example of a typical web form that you would see today. Unfortunately, this isn't entirely clear to Chrome the purpose of each input here. It looks like billing because we have credit card and CVC, but we also have inputs that could be ambiguously for shipping or billing addresses, right? So in fact, it's not just unclear to Chrome. It's unclear to all browsers because this is a little underspecified. So a while back, HTML5 added the autocomplete attribute to itself, which we then implemented in Chrome for Chrome's form filling, and then we are piggybacking and reusing for requestAutocomplete. So if you want to invoke the API, you can take 1 second and add autocomplete to each input name. So as we expected, they're actually all billing address inputs. Great. So now that we've elucidated each input's purpose to Chrome so that we're more confident about getting the information from the user and filling it back in correctly, how do we invoke the API? So it should be literally as easy as form_element.requestAutocomplete. We've worked really hard to keep the API very slim and easy to use, integration super quick. So don't start hacking away yet. As a security measure, we only allow the API to be invoked in response to a user gesture. So we're going to show you an example of that later. And first, we also have some ideas how you could optimize requestAutocomplete for your flow. Because while we were working on this, we noticed that if you take the existing web form flow we have here, and then you just invoke requestAutocomplete on top of it, you're in double trouble, right? You have a form on top of a form. People will be forced to make exhibit memes about you. No one wants that. So instead, here's an alternate example, right? So we recommend doing something along these lines. We recommend that you move invoking requestAutocomplete earlier in your checkout flow, right? So in the response to clicking on a checkout button, or maybe when you're adding new users and asking billing information from them, right? So let's, as you see, I've added a checkout button here, and let's see a slightly beefier code example. So here we're using simple feature detection to determine whether the user's browser has requestAutocomplete. So this will allow you to write code now that should work in the future when all browsers have this. So if the browser does not have requestAutocomplete, we fall back simply to the traditional web form flow. And if it does, we can simply on-click, invoke our API, and then on successful submission, you'll get a brand new event dispatched in the form called the autocomplete event. Don't feel bad, we just added it. Don't feel left out if you didn't know about it. And then after that, the form has all the information filled in it, and you can just submit it normally like you usually would, okay? So, and then at this point, like I mentioned, you don't want 2 forms in a row, so we recommend you just hide your current form so it doesn't clutter up your site and make users think they're going to have to input stuff. Great. So if you were paying close attention, and I hope you were, you'll notice that we also have a cancel button, right? So what happens when a user cancels? How do you handle that in the code? So for this, we've also added another event called the autocomplete error event. This event includes, as a property of the event passed in, a reason, right? So this reason, in this case, we can handle it by just looking for the cancel string that is equivalent to it. So in this case, when you cancel a modal dialog above a site, there's probably not much you really need to do. The browser has already left the context, so the user is already on your site, still there. Nothing explicit should be required, so that's what we're just returning in this example. And then there's a couple other reasons why you might get an error. The first is maybe your form isn't actually annotated with autocomplete yet. So that's more of a developer integration thing. Or as well, a user could have explicitly disabled this from settings, like Evan did earlier before the demo to show the fallback behavior. And then there's a couple other edge cases that I can talk to you afterwards about. And then lastly, let's get into our implementation. So I showed you how easy this is. It should only take a second to integrate it with your site. And let's see how Chrome implements our specific proposed standard. So one aspect that I think Chrome has kind of in common with new user or guest checkouts on merchant sites is that we also have new installs. So if someone has just first installed Chrome, how do we get their payment information without them ever having actually input it into Chrome? So we noticed early on that there's a high probability that they will be existing Google users already, right? So in this case, perhaps if the user is already logged into Google, we can talk to the cloud, and the cloud will give us from on high. Maybe they've paid for something on Android in the in-apps payment SDK, on Google Play, or with the Google Wallet app, in which case they've already given their information to Wallet, right? So all of these clients already harness Wallet information. So we just went ahead and integrated requestAutocomplete with Google Wallet, right? So this adds a second data source for users to choose from. So you have both local form filling data in Chrome that's synced, like Evan mentioned, as well as existing Google users' payment information. This is really powerful. I should mention a couple things that you probably already thought of. This also allows users that have already paid from any of these sources to pay for things on your website right now. That is really cool. As well as when you add, for instance, a credit card from Chrome, it will be instantly usable on Play or any other source that uses Google Wallet, because it's all using the same like common secure vault. Great. So we've come to the presentation that makes me the most excited, uncomfortably excited, if you will. So this is my favorite feature as a user. I want to tell everyone about it. I want to tell my mom. In fact, my mom's watching right now. So Mom, I have something for you. So a lot of people minimize the amount of sites that they give their billing information to, right? This is to make sure that if one of them, in the unfortunate event that this site gets hacked, that there are less targets to accidentally, give out their billing information, right? So what we've done, and a benefit of integrating requestAutocomplete with Wallet, is we've added a new feature that allows Wallet to never, ever give away your real credit card. These are called virtual one-time cards by Google Wallet. So what this allows is, for each transaction, you can give out a temporary special card number that the vendor site uses to charge your original card without ever having to give out the real card number. This is amazing. This is changing the way that I shop online. I mean, this is really cool. So, I mean, this changes the way, for instance, I shop, because before I was willing to pay extra money to buy from verified vendors, or to go on sites that already have my billing information to minimize how many actually have it. This makes that much less of a deal. So, if your information does get hacked, they only have payment information that can't even be used anymore. So this is awesome for the web, awesome for our users, and we think this is like a killer feature that we've added. In addition to that, using Google Wallet gets us fraud detection for free, right? So we interface with Google Wallet's fraud detection engine. Chrome is elevated. Chrome has privileges that normal websites don't have. So we can pass along secondary information with each transaction to help keep the user safe and to make sure that the correct user is using the correct account. So say an attempted fraudster tries to use a different machine than you've traditionally used to pay for something, we can detect that right away, and we can issue, before the transaction even can complete, like a challenge to re-enter your verification code off your credit card, or in the case that this person is trying to do something especially nasty, re-authenticate with Google completely, right? So this is a great win for users as well, just another security layer we're adding on by integrating Wallet with requestAutocomplete. Great. So let's see a virtual card in action. So here's the same website that Evan was showing earlier. It's just in an iframe inside this presentation. So let's see, what do we want to buy? I'll get an aerator, because it's a little stuffy on stage. I need some air. So let's show the checkout flow. So you'll notice here, well, first, there's another error. It's not the same as before. This one is, the details will be shared with GoogleDrive.com. That's the site hosting this iframe. You'll notice that when an iframe hosts and invokes this API, we actually prompt the user saying, by the way, this isn't coming from the original site. Anyways, let's sign in to use Google Wallet. All right. Just an example user. All right, great. So this is my credit card information as stored in a Google Wallet. You'll see my totally real card number ends with 1111. Anyone that's ever tested credit card sites knows that's not. But anyways, let's protect my fake cards too. All right, so I'm submitting, we're talking with Wallet, and very quickly we come back and bam, there's a brand new virtual card waiting for me on the vendor site. Again, this is a card that's given for each transaction, a special number, and it bills the exact same card without ever having to get it out. That's awesome. You'll never have to give out your card on the web again. That's pretty transformative. All right, so do we want to show our promised mobile demo?
Indeed we do. We told you that mobile was a place where we can make a big impact, and so we'll prove it to you. But I'll point out one more thing about this before I switch away from it, which is that this number, the site will still run it through its normal payment processor backend. I will not do so until I press place order. So this is a really lightweight API that we're adding. It's just one more way to get users' data from them, but it uses the same backend as the site's already had in place for its other payment flows. And now I'll show it to you on the mobile device as soon as I log in and switch over. All right.
They'll see our super secret password.
Yes. I hope no one can read that quickly. So anyway, this is the same site. This is the mobile version of the site. In the time that I was sitting in that chair over there, I looked it up and learned that it's actually pronounced the Anophelist. If you were wondering, if you learned nothing else today, that's a good takeaway. This time I'm going to go on and I'm going to buy the robot wine sheath because I'm on Android, and that seems the most appropriate. I'm signed in as the same user. I'm just going to tell you. So here I go through the checkout flow. It got my information from Wallet. I didn't have to type anything in, and it's good to go. I'm already ready to press submit. But I'm actually going to instead make this a gift again, but this time to Dan. He's done such a good job presenting today. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Chrome already knows his address. I've typed it in the past because I've shipped him things before, and so it's suggesting that I fill it in, and I have done so. It's as easy as that. So now Dan is the shipping man. It's still being billed to John Doe's credit card. I am John Doe. And as soon as I press submit, Wallet is now taking this opportunity to generate the OneTime credit card and sending it down to the page. And as I also promised before, this UI is still a little bit rough around the edges. So this is a bleeding edge copy of the code that we have here. Oh, and it's done. So this card number, once again, is not the one that ends in a bunch of ones. It's a new credit card number, and I don't have to worry about what happens if the Anophelist one day is the target of an insidious hacker's attentions. I'll place my order, and I'm done. And so as you can see, even though I filled in some new data, sort of, there was a form field. I didn't have to type anything. You probably didn't see the keyboard. Well, you didn't see me use the keyboard once except to log onto the phone. That was the closest thing. So that was very exciting. And now I actually see this as a platform that I'm willing to buy stuff on. And I mean, mobile is growing tremendously as a platform from which to browse the web. And now we think that this will help will help ecommerce keep pace with e-commerce in the same way that browsing the web off a mobile device has possibly kept up with, or even will one day surpass browsing from a normal desktop device. So with that, back to the slides. This, as you can see, is Dan and me if you want to reach out to one of us. Here's some contact information. And now we'd like to open the floor up for some questions. There's both, so if anyone has a question that's live, there's mics up here. If anyone thinks of a question later, you can send us an email at this address. And then also we have some audience members at home who may be have entered questions on here? Well, if they do, we'll see them. So
They may not.
we'll start with a live question.
By the way, this is Cindy from the wallet side to help us answer questions.
Yeah, this is Cindy. She's been helping coordinate with Wallet. So.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
Hi, Cindy. Looks great. Can't wait to use it. Now, one-time transactions aren't the only kind of transactions on commerce. I want to sell a subscription to somebody. If it's always automatically behind the scenes giving a one-time credit card number, how do I charge it again next month and the month after that? Is there some way to tell you guys, hey, this is going to be a recurring billing event?
Sure. So we would consider that a single transaction. So the user is saying, I want to do this 12 times with you. So that would be a transaction that would be a supported use case.
Yeah, we've been thinking about this for a while. So.
Okay.
Yes, that's definitely support.
So if I was the vendor and I was getting one of these one-time things, would I learn that it's a one-time and basically know not to save it, or would I actually have to just kind of guess?
Well, I think that our recommendation is probably not to be saving this information, because one of the things that even if you're not dealing with new users but returning users, when you get a new credit card and then you go and you visit all these sites that have independently stored your credit card information, you would have to update it many times. So if you're using this UI, our recommendation is probably that you don't store it and that they will just update it and continue to use this API for transferring their information down to your site over and over.
As a follow-up to the recurring billing, well, you'd said that this is going to be a standard, and so I would imagine like implementations in other browsers wouldn't necessarily be tied to Google Wallet. And so it would be nice from whether you're doing a subscription or whatever, well, especially in the case of subscriptions, to have that be transparent. That one-time use card really kind of breaks everything, because coming from other users, other browsers, we wouldn't necessarily be getting a one-time use card, or is that some kind of required piece of the spec that they have to implement it in some other fashion?
So the virtual cards are specific to the Google Wallet implementation. So when the other browser manufacturers implement this and they're handing you normal credit card, like the user's original credit card number, it's business as usual. And the same goes for the Google Wallet virtual card. Even though we're not recommending you store the card, you can treat it just like any credit card.
So just to clarify, so on our side, as say like the site owner side, when we go out to hit that one-time use card again, it will go through.
You follow the same processes and rules you would to normally process a transaction. So there's a card number, an expiration date, and a CVV. So everything that normally happens on the payment network occurs as normal.
Okay, so it sounds like the one-time use card really means that I'm the only vendor that has that number. It's not necessarily you can only charge it once.
Correct. It's per transaction. So like there's a lot of use cases. Let's say you ship things in 2 shipments and you charge the card twice as you ship each product. That's supported.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks.
Okay.
Sort of to piggyback on the last question, I was curious what efforts are being made to reach out to the other browser vendors like Safari or Mozilla, especially since the tie-in seems to be, or the juice in this is the tie-in with Google Wallet and with autocomplete via Chrome sync.
Well, we have been in talks with other vendors, and we've received some supportive messaging from them. And part of the reason why we're going ahead with the implementation is because we want to prove through testing with some trusted partners, A/B testing, that this really does increase conversion rates. And once we've proven the value of it as a platform, we expect the other browser vendors to jump on board as well.
Okay, and can I ask if Safari is one of those vendors, or Apple in this case?
I don't think we can. Just come and see me afterwards.
So one quick one, not quick. The warning, is that on who this form's going to versus on the form submit? So if you're using CyberSource or Stripe, right, am I always going to get that warning that it's not me who's actually going to get where that form's going?
So are you talking about the warning coming from a different frame?
Yeah.
If you're invoking from Stripe, it depends on how it happens, but generally, if you're invoking from a different frame, you'll have a warning, but you can work to remove that warning, and I can show you how afterwards.
Okay, yeah, because we do CyberSource, for example.
Yeah.
And then on the OneTime, I'm short. So from the user point of view, we tokenize and then basically charge later, 30 days later. And there's like this CS issue. If at Kickstarter your pledge may fail, how would CS be able to work with someone on a one-time card? Does the user actually know they've used a one-time card? So, your pledge has failed. What card did you use? No, you didn't use that card.
Sure.
What card did I use, right?
Yeah, so they said multiple times during the presentation, this is cutting edge UI. We are in the process of refining the UI to make it very obvious to the user what is going on. And obviously, we talked about it multiple times that when they get to that review page, they're going to look and be like, wait, that's not my card. We're prepared to handle that within the UI in a graceful manner so that they'll understand it. And more than that, in Google Wallet, we provide them a transaction history so that they can see what transactions they've done with Google Wallet, and we're working to educate them on how to make that analogy. And then even beyond that, we do provide merchant support to Google Wallet merchants that might need extra assistance aligning transactions.
Okay. Yeah, it was a little bit more of a feedback than question, but
sure.
Thanks.
Sorry, another one-time card question. I was just going to ask, I'm from Africa. Is this going to be available globally? And will you be able to integrate other payment types that are not necessarily cards?
That's a great question. Google Wallet right now is US only. So international support would be something we would do in the future. So when you're supporting this on international sites, the users would be able to use the Chrome data as their preferred choice.
So I'd like to point out that right now, Wallet is one of the data sources that you may choose with our implementation, the other one being local Chrome Autofill, which is also synced to your other devices. And we don't have currently, it's bleeding edge, we haven't launched it yet. So we don't have international support in our UI currently, but that's something that we're looking to add very soon. And Autofill will still be usable. I mean, Autofill already, Chrome Autofill does support the international use case. And then in order to support that for Wallet as well, will depend on Wallet rolling that out, which will happen.
So yeah, it will be.
It will happen. Yes.
Okay. So this is basically about refunds, how to handle that. So like either a full refund in case the customer returns something, or if I want to authorize for a higher amount, but just want to actually book a lower amount. Business as usual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just do the same thing you do today.
So nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Okay. And what about other payment options? Like in this case, we only saw everything about credit card. Is there any option to distinguish between things like credit card, cash on delivery, or other things?
Between credit card and what?
No, this depends on credit card right now. I mean, credit or debit, right? There's no cash on delivery.
Right. So right now, Wallet only supports credit cards, but you would not be prohibited from using requestAutocomplete on your site if you use alternative tenders like gift cards. You would just set up the workflow of your checkout so that the user can choose those before they got into this flow.
Right. So what I think Cindy is saying is that you can launch this dialogue. The plan is that you'll be able to get this dialogue and get everything except for the credit card. And then if you want to do accept like checkmark like cash on delivery, then that would be handled outside of this API.
Correct.
Okay, so basically we have to check that before in the form step, and then in the next step, in the second step, when the user selected the payment method, we will call your autocomplete.
Yeah, this is a process that we haven't optimized yet, but we're looking to further refine the UI to make sure that we handle things like loyalty cards, gift cards, options like that in an efficient and have a nice flow for that as well. So thank you for the question.
We should mention if you have other further use cases, feel free to email this email request.
Yeah, like I said, this is this implementation is kind of testing the waters and improving the concept. So we do appreciate your feedback and look forward to it for all the different use cases that we would like to be able to support like that one.
Mm-hmm.
So if this autocomplete is to become a standard, it seems that you'd have to support additional wallet providers. So are there any plans to talk with PayPal or Stripe or anyone else?
Yeah, we look forward to, we welcome collaboration from others. The standard itself is completely agnostic to the payment provider. The data source is not a payment processor or anything, but the standard and where you're getting the payment information from are completely disjointed. So different browser vendors may choose to implement different backends, but we are also open to talks and collaboration with other sources, but we haven't gotten there yet. We chose to start with Autofill because it's what Chrome already has cooked into it, and Wallet because of the features that we talked about, we presented today, which we think add security and convenience, and we're looking forward to adding other processors in there, well, providers as well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, the one-time cards sound awesome. Is there a way on my site to only accept those and not accept autofill data so that I never have someone's real credit card?
Encourage people to use Wallet when using requestAutocomplete. Right now, we don't have a lot of mechanisms for talking to the dialogue from the site. We're investigating various things to be able to embed like inputs or something like that to be able to talk to the dialogue. We're working on that. But right now, hopefully, most people just see the benefit of doing that themselves.
Yeah, I was thinking just in terms of I only had the one-time card, if that would actually have some impact on me in terms of being PCI compliant. Maybe there'd be less burden on me because I'm actually not exposed because I'm not handling real cards.
I don't know how this affects your PCI compliance.
Yeah. I know it probably doesn't immediately. I'm just thinking down the road. That would be an awesome option for me to have. Thanks, guys.
That's an interesting one. Thank you. We'll think about that.
Hey, so it sounds like really cool stuff. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. So the one-time credit cards, it's a merchant-specific credit card?
It is a transaction-specific credit card.
Okay.
So if I visit your site 3 times and I make 3 purchases, it will be 3 different virtual card numbers.
Cool. And then Chrome Autofill has been around forever. Are those 2 standards completely converged so that if you mark up your web pages with autocomplete for regular Chrome, that'll now work automatically with this?
Yeah, so Autofill has already implemented those, the standard already. So we're just kind of piggybacking on top of that. So Autofill will work with that. It either just released recently or will be in the near future. So that's a very recent development, though. Okay. But yes, it will work.
And they do share the same data source.
Okay, cool.
So if you type in information to this dialog and save it, that will also be available to Autofill to fill into other sites that are not using our API.
Cool. And it used to be like X-autocomplete. Now it's just autocomplete. Is that right?
That's been removed.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like every webmaster in the world should implement marking up their web forms with these autocomplete, just because even if they don't use Wallet or the payment solution or anything else, Chrome will make the form filling incredibly easy and a very low barrier, and every other browser has a real incentive to implement that as well. Is that,
That is correct.
Okay.
And then those that also want to use this API only, then it's really lightweight to just add the request autocomplete call.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand, because I'm about to tell a bunch of webmasters, you guys should all do this, because it's a really good idea.
Yes,
autocomplete
is great.
And like we mentioned, browsers that don't understand this seamlessly fall back, so it's okay to do it now.
Yes.
Would you consider, or is this already part of the standard, adding some sort of a mechanism for developers to identify the underlying credit card being used? So some sort of token or a completely opaque hash or HMAC or something like that. The reason I'm thinking this is for abuse prevention. Certain systems depend on credit cards being the only verifiable piece of information. And so if a user can show up and do 100 free trials of something, then that abuse prevention mechanism goes away.
That's good feedback.
Yeah.
That's definitely, we're happy to hear it and consider it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and awesome feedback like that can also go to that email address
Yes,
once again.
email us.
That'd be a lot easier for us to follow up and make sure to track you down and have good answers for you. So.
Great. So it seems like we're about out of time.
Yep.
I didn't see any questions on the
If anyone has a question, it's 20 seconds or less.
Go. Oh, nobody.
I'll start you off. What about one-time cards? Yes.
Sorry. So for the late capture, if
So the question was again.
I think the question was that one-time cards have a time limit before they expire, and if you want to charge it after that time limit is over.
Right. You do an auth, let's say the auth can hold for 30 days, but after 30 days, then you can only charge with the one card. But now we have no reference back to where the card is from and the customer.
Sure. The expiration date on the credit card is, the question was for everyone streaming live, what about expiration dates on the credit card if you do an auth and then it expires before you can capture the funds? The expiration date is set up as such to give you enough time to do that. So that would not be an issue.
All right. I think we're over.
Right. Yes, we're done. Over, even.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.